Welcome back to the Craftsman Online podcast. This is a weekly program focused on the relevant topics in Freemasonry and the various aspects of the craft. Any opinions, thoughts, or viewpoints shared during this program are that of the individual and do not reflect the official position of any Grand Lodge, appendant, or concordant body from which that member may hail. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, editor-in-chief of CraftsmanOnline.com. Very excited to welcome him on the program for the first time. Brother Eric Morabito, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Brother Michael.
He's calling from the high points up in the Mid-Hudson Valley. He's also a member of, he's the junior deacon of Adonai Lodge number 718 in Highland, New York, a noble of the Cypress Shrine in Albany. And we also know him as the Walking Man, and that's a story that we're going to share here on this episode. Right Worshipful Brother Anthony Prizia, he shared your story on our Craftsman Online blog last year. For those who haven't read the article, we've made it available in our show links. I've also seen you featured in People Magazine. For those that might not know you from there, we can start at the beginning. What led you to knock on the door of a Masonic lodge, and why were you seeking to become a Freemason?
A number of years ago, when I was a Boy Scout and Cub Scout leader, a gentleman from the Cypress Shrine gave a presentation at one of our leader meetings and presented the Shriners and asked us to collect can tabs. That's an ongoing event that they do to raise money for their Shrine Center. And I figured that was something I definitely wanted to do. My job is as a weights and measures inspector. So I regulate the scales that the aluminum is weighed on. I regulate the gas pumps that they're using to buy the gas to operate the vehicles. And they're helping children. Being a scout leader, I was all for all that. So I got involved, and about a year and a half into it, while doing an inspection one day, I was doing a gas station, and I found that all the gas meters were giving away a little bit of gas to the tune of about 1.4 cents per gallon. I brought this to the attention of the station operators, and their reaction was, it's only a penny. I hate that phrase. So I decided to use that as a learning tool for the boys in my Cub Scout den. And I wanted to teach them how the things with very little value by themselves, when added together, can equal quite a bit. I was trying to equate it to them being, young individuals. They didn't feel like they were worth very much, but working together, they could accomplish great things. So we started a penny drive. It started just with the 8 boys in my den. Then we branched included my older son's Boy Scout troop. Other units got involved. It became a council-wide event. And we ended up collecting over 220,000 pennies. It was interesting turning those into the bank. I was not their favorite person for a while.
I'm imagining the scene from Seinfeld when Kramer walked in with pockets full of change to pay for something.
Well, this was literally 43 gallons of pennies, and it took over a month.
Jeez. Going
to the bank daily with gallons and just dumping them into the machine and having it counted out. But when all was said and done, we had $2,246.09 that we had decided we're not going to go to the Boy Scouts. We wanted it to go to help children, and we selected the Shriners. We were already involved with collecting can tabs, so we decided to give them the money. I then contacted the potentate at the time, a gentleman named Ray Struck, and told him, okay, I want to give you the check. And he told me I had to present the check. So I present it to you. Here you go. That did not work. He brought me to his potentate's ball. My wife and I were guests of honor, so I could present the check in front of a large audience. While there, I met some very, very wonderful people from the Adonai Lodge in particular, because that's the table that Ray had sat me at. And I got to know them a little bit, and I decided that this was an organization I thought I'd like to get involved with. I knew my boys were going to age out of scouts, and I don't do good with a lot of free time. And I finally said, what do I have to do? I had no idea what was involved. And of course, Ray had then informed me that to become a Shriner, you first have to be a Master Mason. So I then turned to him and said, there's always a catch. So I decided to give it a try. I really didn't have an intention of joining the Masons. I didn't know anything really about them. And it turns out being probably one of the best decisions I ever made. When I joined Adonai Lodge, I didn't know anybody there. I really did not fit in my mind, even though the brothers really went out of their way to make me feel welcome and to be part of the group. So I stuck it out. I got through all 3 degrees, got to know a lot of wonderful people. Some of the best people I've known in my life come out of that lodge. And it was a decision that I was very glad I made. And after becoming the Master Mason, a couple months later, there was a ceremonial, and I joined Cypress Shrine, and it's been uphill ever since. I'm always doing something and being involved.
It's interesting you say that. I've known a few other brothers that they wanted to be a Shriner, and they didn't know the connection between Freemasonry and the Shrine. They just wanted to be a part of being a Shriner for the wonderful work that Shriners do for children and families in need.
When I was getting interviewed to join Adonai, Right Worshipful Anthony Prizia was one of the guys interviewing me, along with 2 other brothers, and our schedules just did not meet. We could not match up. And finally, he's like, "Look, we have to interview you before you can join. We have to do it." And he gave me this Saturday or this Sunday. Are you available? And I said, "I'm doing a pancake breakfast with my Boy Scouts on Saturday." So he said, "Okay, we can meet you there if that's okay." So Anthony and 2 other brothers showed up at the Applebee's we were doing a pancake breakfast at. After making them pay the $8 admission fee, we sat down. They asked me what the pancake breakfast was for. And I said, "Well, it's for a group. I don't know if you guys know it very well. It's the Shriners. We're raising money for them." That was kind of the end of my interview.
Yeah, because there's other men that want to get into Freemasonry that don't consider any of the concordant or appendant bodies like the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, or the Shrine. They just want to be a Blue Lodge Mason or a Symbolic Mason, which is great. And it's just interesting that you were kind of coming about it, that you wanted the end result, and when they put the 3 degrees of Freemasonry in front of me, you were probably sitting there going, "But wait a sec. I wasn't ready for this." How did you find going through those 3 degrees?
It was a little challenging. I mean, as we all know, there's a bit of memorization involved. And also when I joined, I did the first degree, and then they said, "Okay, this is what you have to memorize." And I did. It took a lot of work.
I'm also going to guess like the esoteric thought and the historical aspects that are kind of sprinkled throughout all the lessons in Freemasonry. This was something that mentally you probably weren't prepared for as someone who normally knocks on the door of Freemasonry to accept this. This must have been, I would have loved to have been in your mind when you were being exposed to all of this.
It was honestly, it was a little frustrating at first because I really didn't have anybody to go to. I shouldn't say that. I didn't realize that I had people I could go to.
Right.
I know now that my brothers are there. They were there from day one. I just wasn't comfortable enough to go asking them for help.
Gotcha.
I took it as, okay, this is something I have to do. I have to learn this. I would spend a lot of time while working. Since I'm a walking man, I'd go for walks every day, and I had the books with me, and I would just memorize as I was walking along.
It's fascinating. And I can only imagine the joy that must have come the day that you were raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason. And I'm sure every brother that's gone through this experience, usually there's representatives of all the other bodies and groups that are associated with Masonry, and they come up and you're like, yes, finally, here's the chance. I can now pursue this opportunity in the Shrine. This is what I was seeking.
Oh, definitely. And the other thing, after I did the entered apprentice degree, it dawned on me that my grandfather was a Mason. He passed away in 1976. I was 13 years old. He never spoke about it. At least I shouldn't say, he never spoke openly about it. But my grandfather was known for doing woodworking and crafts. And whenever he came to visit or we'd go on vacation with him, we always had projects that we would do. And looking back on it now, I realized what he was giving me were Masonic lessons, because he would always be telling us things like keep your work square, always remain plumb, and keep everything level. And it didn't mean anything extra to me growing up. I just thought he was telling me how to, measure and cut wood correctly. But what he was really doing was giving me lessons on how to be a good person.
It's so interesting, and I don't want to do the whole show on just this, but it's kind of a relevant part of the story here is that we're told the first place that you're made a Mason is in your heart, and the second place is in a Masonic lodge. And looking back at your background, your profile, what you were doing, Boy Scouts, you had a male figure in the family who was giving you these Masonic lessons, and you were seeking to become a Shriner to help other people. You were a Freemason already. You just didn't know it yet.
I would imagine. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So I want to get to the walking man part because we've mentioned it a few times and people are thinking, what does that mean? This gets a little personal as well. And it's, to whatever level of comfort that you want to share with us. But you became the walking man because of a personal health condition. Can you expand on that a little?
I've never been the most physically fit of people. I've always been a little stocky or fat, however you want to look at it. And when I was 44 years old, I was in my living room with my youngest son. He was about 10 at the time, maybe 9 or 10. And I went upstairs. We had a split ranch. It was 6 steps to go upstairs to the bathroom, went up, came back down, sat on the couch. And I noticed that I was instantly sweating. I was dizzy. I was seeing spots and I was panting. And I'm thinking, wow, this is not good. I'm about to have a heart attack. It didn't happen, but I knew that there was something wrong with my lifestyle at that time. I had to do something to change. When I was 4 years old, my father died. And I was looking at my son on the couch, big smile on his face. We're watching TV. And I was determined. I said, this is not happening to him and my other kids. It's not happening to my wife. I have to do something. That was the impetus to get me going. So I basically cut desserts out of my life and soft drinks. And I said I needed to do some kind of exercise to get myself in better shape. And I decided to start walking a little bit because I was on track in high school and college doing field events. I wasn't a runner. And I knew running was not for me. I can't do it. I hate it. But walking I could do. And it was low impact. And it was something I could always, anywhere I was, I could always walk. So I started walking a little bit. And when I first started, a mile and a half was really kicking my butt. But I stuck to it. Every morning, I have a routine now where before I go to work, I come down. There's a park where I live. I walk around the park for about a mile and a half, and then I walk through town. I do about 5 to 5.5 miles before heading up to work in the morning. And then Monday to Friday right now, I usually, before the day is done, I'll have anywhere from 8 to 10 miles in every day. On the weekends, I take it easy. I do 5 or 6. The other thing is when I walk, I'm always looking around for what I can find. I used to live in a college town, and when walking, I would find money on the ground. And not only change. I mean, I would find bills. In the course of, since I started walking in 2009, since I started this whole thing, I have found over $6,300. So anything I found, I give off to the Shriners.
I want to start making that connection because this is, to me, is your story. It's what you took something that was in your heart for you to be, and that is to become a Freemason and a Shriner, because you had such a passion inside of you for helping the Shriner Hospital, which initially kind of just started out by chance, but some would say, really, was it just a chance selection? And now you commit to your walks every year. And we're not talking about just walking 4 hours in the morning early in your town or 11 miles, throughout the day or month or week. We're talking about very long planned journeys that you take. And this is the part of your story that I think everyone just goes, I can't believe that somebody does this. Maybe the first image that comes to their mind is when Forrest Gump just decides he's going to start running. And for you is I'm just going to start walking. So tell us about your walks to the Shriner hospitals and centers and how this all started.
Well, it started with, since I was doing the walking every day, I wanted to see if I could raise some money. And it started out for the transportation fund for my Shrine Center. And I figured if I could get people to make a contribution of like 1 or 2 cents for every mile I walked over the course of a year, we could raise some money. And I did that for 2 years. And each year we raised a little over $1,000, and I was ecstatic. I was doing something good. And then my 50th birthday was approaching. And I had this grand idea. Hey, maybe I could actually walk to the Springfield Hospital. I don't know where this idea came from, but I decided I would give it a shot. My wife was very encouraging. And I mean, I tried to plan for it. I had no idea what I was planning for. I figured, no, I know how to camp. The scouts have taught me how to camp. I know how to walk, and I'll just go. So I downloaded some Google directions and I set off. Had no idea where I would stop during the day. I figured I could find food along the way. It really wasn't a well-prepared walk.
Did you at least use like a path, or were you on the road, or what was your route?
I went up basically 9W from Highland up to Albany, and I had downloaded directions from Google, and I really don't recommend that because Google gives great directions, but they're kind of out of the beaten trail, shall we say. I was on a lot of back roads where nobody was.
Yeah, I was imagining either you going through the forests in Cairo through the Catskill Mountains over the ridge to get.
No. I walk on the main roads. It's actually for my own safety, even though a lot of people said, oh, you're in danger of getting hit by vehicles. I'm like, that is true. And I've had a few close calls. But if anything happens to me and I keel over on the side of the road, I figure people will see me. The first year I did it, there were roads where I didn't see cars for like 2 hours. Not a good place to be walking. Plus, they were very, remote areas. And I mean, one day I had 2 coyotes cross my path. You never know what you're going to encounter up here.
And are you walking by yourself, or do you have someone that comes along for a section or a portion?
No, I'm by myself. I have yet to find anybody this crazy to want to do the walk with me. And to be honest with you, I don't want anybody to go with me. When I start, I mean, I'm almost too committed to what I'm doing. Case in point, when I started this year, I left my house at 5:00 in the morning, pitch black out, and I walked until 4:30 that afternoon.
Now, having lived in the Albany area, I'm familiar with where you're going. I've done that drive from Albany to Springfield. I know it's about, by car, 90 minutes, depending on how fast the flow is and traffic and all this. I'm just trying to imagine, when you spend one day walking leaving from the Catskills, where do you end up?
Cypress Shriners, this isn't a Shriner event, but they do support me. And they've all, after the third year is when they got on board with me, because at first they had no idea who I was or what I was doing. But it wasn't an event. It was a personal journey I was taking. So it really didn't involve the Shrine Center, but now it does. So when I get up there, there's usually a welcome. People are there. They meet me. They have a barbecue, and there's a hotel across the street. They get me a room for the night. But I have that one night in the hotel. Usually, I spend 2 or 3 nights with friends I've met along the way, and the other nights I have a tent. I carry everything in a baby stroller. I have a jogging stroller, so I'm the epitome of a homeless person while I'm doing this. Especially after a couple of days on the road, I'm a little worse for wear. The first year I did it, it was interesting because I had no idea where I was stopping, where I'd get food or anything. It was just I gave it a shot. One of the biggest things that came out of that year, I was going up a section of Route 20 in Lee, Massachusetts, called Jacob's Ladder. It's about an 11-mile stretch that's predominantly uphill. It's not fun. And as I was doing this, it was raining. This was the end of April. And I'm plodding along, and I knew I had to stop. I was cold. I was wet to the bone. And there was a hunting lodge. And I went in to try and get a room, but it wasn't open. They had winter hours, and there was nobody there from 11 till 2. And I knew I couldn't stop, and I didn't have cell service to call. So I continued walking. And about a mile later, a young woman pulled over and asked me if I was okay and if I needed help. She realized I was walking for a reason. I mean, I had some signage on my stroller, and she realized I was doing it for a cause, but she just wanted to make sure I was okay. So I told her what was going on, and I told her that the hotel was closed, and I asked her where the next one was, and she said it was about 6 miles down the road. So I looked at my watch. I said, that'll take me 2 hours. Thank you very much. I started walking. She then stopped me and made me get in her car so I could at least warm up. And she said she would drive me there. I was not willing to take a ride. I wanted to see if I could do this. It was a personal goal for me. And we finally settled on, she drove me back to the hotel that I'd already passed. When we got there, actually, when we were sitting in her car having our little discussion, I noticed it was 37 degrees outside. And like I said, it had been raining all day. And I knew I just had to stop. So we got to the hotel. By the time I got all my stuff out of her car, she was coming out of the door and said, wish me luck, have a great time. And she jumps in the car and drives away. And the woman at the hotel turns to me and she goes, here's your room key. You're all set. She just paid for your room. It was amazing. I mean, she was my guardian angel. Since then, we've become friends. And every year now I stop and I stay with her and her family. It's her husband. They have 2 children now. And every year they look forward to me coming through. The crazy walking guy is coming by.
We share something in common besides being brothers in Freemasonry. Years ago, I did a bike ride from Salisbury, Maryland to Baltimore, Maryland, which is about 200 miles, I would say, for a charity, for a cause. And when Anthony, Brother Prizia, shared your story and I read it and I was sort of thinking about it and I was like, yeah, I've been in your shoes, although I was fortunate enough to be on a bike, which I'd never really ridden a 12-speed bike like that before. There was some training that went into it, not just on how to do it, but endurance with the bike, but also physical training for my body, but also mentally. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that what you feel, but then also what you think about as you're going through those challenging moments, those hills that you want to overcome.
I would see a hill and I would go, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. And I would just keep plugging along. And all I would keep telling myself was, it's going to end. Eventually I'm going to get to the downhill side of this. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to get there. But I've done it. I've done it numerous times. And I know now that I can do it. But initially, I didn't know what was ahead of me. It was really a goal of, can I make it to the hospital? Can I do this? And I just kept pushing myself. I do find that there's a disconnect between like my head from the rest of my body. I try not to think about what I'm feeling, because that would be very intimidating if I just started thinking about all the little aches and pains.
But mentally, like, are you thinking about your obligation as a Freemason as you're walking? Are you thinking about the children, the families that you're helping through the Shriner Hospital work? Like, what fuels you? What's your passion?
It's a 9-day journey that I'm doing, and I think about all kinds of things. I mean, every now and again, something will come to mind, and I'll just go with it. A lot of time is spent, what can I do in the future? What other events can I do to promote what I'm doing? I think one when I was along this year, I came up with the idea, or actually it was last year. I said, I can get more people involved in doing a walk if they were to participate, but nobody wants to walk to the hospital because nobody's that crazy. But everybody likes doing a 5K.
Right.
So in my mind, I started trying to organize, how would I set up organizing and running a 5K? And then this year I held 2 of them.
It's interesting because going back to that Forrest Gump story, as he was running, he was picking up followers. Unfortunately, in your case, maybe you got to grow a beard and wear a Bubba Gump hat to get guys to come along with you. But they all thought that he was this wise person, this shaman for doing this, and they all wanted to hear what he had to say at the end, and it was, I'm done running. So I guess, as we get ready to close out our talk here, is what advice do you have for brothers who are listening, who inside their heart they want to do something big, they want to be able to contribute and raise funds or help another cause out in a certain way? What advice do you have when part of that is actually investing yourself physically and mentally to get to that point?
Well, of course, when I'm doing these walks, people always think I'm doing it to raise money for the hospitals, and that's part of it. The biggest part of it is I'm trying to raise awareness that the hospitals are out there. And because of my walks, I know 3 families have connected to the hospitals. And what I try to get across to my fellow brothers and nobles is, if you think about, you want to do something, but you're intimidated by it, as we all are, give it a try. It doesn't have to be any grandiose event. It can just be something small. Start with something that has meaning to you and give it a shot. Don't be afraid of, failure. What you should be afraid of is not being willing to start it in the first place. And also remember that what you have in mind of this is what's going to take place, when all is said and done, it's going to be different. But get out of it what you can and do what you can to help other people. Find something where you can devote a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, and somebody else will benefit because of it. I have gotten so much personally out of the walks that I've done. It's hard to express to other people that you don't understand it unless you've done something similar. I don't recommend somebody decides to do a 250-mile walk. That's crazy. But you can find something, organize something in your community, get a couple other brothers together and just make a difference. And if we all did a little something in our communities, think how much better off the world would be.
How you started all of this was you noticed the little things that add up to big things.
It's the little things that if you do it consistently, it makes a big difference.
This has been the Craftsman Online podcast. I want to thank my guest this week for joining us, Brother Eric Morabito, the Walking Man. Brother, thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for taking those steps, because as you've shared, they add up to big things.
Well, I thank you for taking the time to let me tell my story and letting me be a part of this. I appreciate it.
If Masonic education is important to you, you can sign up for our email newsletter at craftsmanonline.com. A reminder that new episodes of our podcast are available for download every Monday morning. Until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.